The 2024 U.S. election was a turning point. Donald Trump won both the popular vote and the Electoral College, a result that took many by surprise and highlighted just how divided the nation is. But that division, as much as it's been about politics, isn't confined to Washington, D.C. It's everywhere, even in the galaxy far, far away. For years, a vocal group of Star Wars fans, sometimes called the Fandom Menace, have been pushing back against the Disney era. They say Star Wars has become too woke, that it's lost touch with its roots, and they've rallied against everything from Rey and Finn to the new shows like The Acolyte. Now, with the election results still hanging in the air, I can't help but wonder, maybe we've been wrong about this group. Maybe they aren't just the fringe. What if the toxic fans we've dismissed are actually a much larger part of the fandom than we care to admit? If that's true, then what does that mean for the future of Star Wars? And what does it mean for us as fans? Star Wars has always been a story about hope, about rebellion, about fighting for what's right. It's about the underdog standing up to the oppressor, about ordinary people rising to meet extraordinary challenges. This is a story that should resonate with a wide range of people, yet today, it feels like that shared love for the franchise is fraying, pulled apart by the same forces that divide the world outside. Maybe, just maybe, we've come to a place where the fracture in the fandom mirrors the fracture in society. Once united by our passion for Star Wars, we now find ourselves at odds with differing visions of what this universe should represent. But here's the thing. Star Wars is bigger than any one perspective. It always has been. Sure, the franchise has always been about fighting evil, about rebellion, redemption, and hope. But it's always been about different ways of seeing the world. Some fans love Star Wars for the big ideas, the politics, the struggle for freedom, the importance of community. Others just want to lose themselves in the laser swords and the space battles, the thrilling adventure and the epic scope. And you know what? Both are valid. Both ways of loving Star Wars have always existed. The problem isn't that fans see things differently. The problem is that we've forgotten how to make room for those differences. When we start gatekeeping, whether it's dismissing fans who embrace the Disney era or alienating those who feel disconnected from the new direction, it doesn't just hurt the fandom. It chips away at the very thing that makes Star Wars special. It's a franchise about bringing people together, but right now, it feels like we're doing the opposite. And maybe that's the most disheartening part. Maybe the toxic fans aren't a tiny minority after all. Maybe they're just the loudest, but they've always been there. And maybe, just maybe, they represent a much larger segment of the fan base than we care to admit. Let's talk about the word woke. For a lot of people, that word has become shorthand for what they think is wrong with modern Star Wars. They point to characters like Rey, Finn, or Rose Tico, or shows like The Acolyte accusing Disney of pushing politics over storytelling. But the truth is, Star Wars has always been political. It's always been about fighting oppression, about standing for the little guy. When Luke Skywalker gazes at the twin suns of Tatooine, he's not dreaming of staying where he is. He's dreaming of a galaxy full of possibility, of freedom. And Leia, when she leads the Rebel Alliance, she's not just fighting the Empire. She's showing us what true leadership, courage, and intelligence looks like. The diversity in modern Star Wars isn't some new political statement. It's an extension of what's always been there. Heroes from all walks of life coming together to fight for a better future. If you're offended by that, maybe you've forgotten what the rebellion was really all about. Inclusivity in Star Wars isn't a betrayal of its legacy. It's a natural part of it. Now, not all criticism of the Disney era is coming from bad faith. Some of it comes from how these stories are being marketed. Shows like The Acolyte and movies like The Last Jedi have been promoted with a heavy focus on diversity. And while that's something worth celebrating, it hasn't always resonated with fans who are looking for pure escapism. And I get that. When the first thing you hear about a new Star Wars project is how inclusive it is, it can feel out of sync with the kind of adventure you're hoping for. Especially if you've been a fan of the franchise for decades and the promise of pure escapism is what drew you in. But that doesn't mean the stories themselves aren't important. They are, and they still speak for themselves. The inclusivity is woven into the fabric of the universe, whether or not you want to admit it. So no, Lucasfilm shouldn't stop telling inclusive stories, but maybe just maybe they don't need to lead with that message in the marketing. Let the stories do the talking. When you watch The Acolyte or revisit The Last Jedi, you'll see it. The richness, the diversity, the complexity. The marketing doesn't need to prove anything. The stories already do the work. In the end, Star Wars is at a crossroads. It's facing the same divisions we see in the world around us. And with everything that's going on, it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking the fandom is just another battleground in the culture wars. But here's the thing. Star Wars is bigger than that. It's bigger than any one fan, any one group, any one vision. The legacy of Star Wars isn't tied to any one ideology. It's about all of us coming together under the banner of hope and justice. It's about finding something bigger than ourselves in a galaxy full of characters, of cultures, of perspectives. Star Wars can't survive if it caters to just one side or the other. It needs to be for everyone. It needs to continue telling stories that reflect the vastness of this universe, that bring people together and not pull them apart. And if someone feels left out, maybe they've forgotten what Star Wars is really all about. At its core, it's not about lightsabers or space battles. It's about hope, about community, about fighting for a better future. It's about finding our place in a galaxy that's bigger than we are. The future of Star Wars doesn't have to be about picking sides. It's about remembering why we fell in love with it in the first place. Because no matter how different we are, there's always a place for us in this galaxy.